Following standard procedure in an officer-involved shooting, the investigation is now being handled by the Alberta Serious Incident Response Team. And to respect the integrity of the ongoing investigation, I'll share with you the events that led up to the situation. Obviously, the issues that happened that led to ASERT's role, those are questions we'll have to sort of direct at ASERT, but I can help you with what led us to the call and sort of things we experienced. So at approximately 4:40 p.m. yesterday, on January 24th, police were called to the neighborhood of Huntington Hills for the report of possible shots fired. The service received a 911 call that a Calgary Transit bus driver reported a shot fired into the bus that narrowly missed the driver. It's believed that there were 5 passengers inside that bus, but fortunately no one was injured in that bus. Police arrived at about into the 1000 block of 78th Avenue Northwest and observed that numerous shots were fired indiscriminately from the residents. Area residents were advised to stay inside and seek shelter. Officers set up containment while shots continued to be fired from the home. Several attempts were made to resolve the situation peacefully. However, the suspect exited the residence and the situation escalated, resulting in the discharge of a service firearm, resulting in killing the suspect. Officers conducted house-to-house inquiries following the shooting, and it does not appear that anyone else was injured as a result of this incident. No officers were injured during the incident, and this was an extremely dynamic and unique situation that required members of the public to take shelter in their own homes for an extended period of time, and we would like to thank them for their cooperation. This incident does not appear to be targeted. The multiple shots that were fired appeared indiscriminate, and we are fortunate that no innocent bystanders were injured. And with that, I'll answer any questions I can.
Are you able to identify the suspect at this time?
Not at this time, although I'm sure that'll come following the ASERT investigations.
It was before mentioned that you guys had been to that residence before for previous calls. Can you talk about the nature of those other calls?
Well, I mean, our experience with the shooter in this case had largely been in the sort of the non-criminal nature. So, I mean, it was we didn't have any particular experience with him in terms of this level of violence.
Was it mental health experience?
We don't know for sure. Again, those are things that will come out of the ASERT investigation, but we've just had, our experience with him, I guess at the point I'd like to make clear, this wasn't some sort of a gang or related to gang violence in the city. This is unique to this particular person. So.
How many officers?
Sorry.
How many officers fired at it?
That'll come from the ASERT investigation as well, unfortunately. Those are the sort of details that ASERT will deal with. So.
Do we know how many shots were fired by the suspect throughout the course of a couple hours? Or?
You know, I've asked that before, and it's because there was several rounds fired before we got there, and our officers were experiencing rounds for the time that they were there, so that we haven't yet been able to count that. But again, that'll come. The actual number will come through the ASERT investigation. But fair to say that there was many rounds fired or experienced by our officers.
And what caliber of weapon was it?
Again, that will come through the ASERT investigation. But
Is the scene still cordoned off for the ASERT investigation, and do you have any idea of when it will be released?
don't know when it'll be released. Again, that's from the investigative standpoint. Of course, our concern after the shooting was because the indiscriminate rounds leaving the residences were other houses experiencing these rounds. Did rounds, was anybody else injured? Was any other property damage done? So some work was done in the initial stage to make sure we didn't have any other crime scenes there.
So the officer who shot, can you just, what's his status right now? He's not working?
All the officers that were at the scene, and because we had a full complement of both our tactical team and regular district officers at the scene, so any of the officers that were witnessed or involved have been looked after, they've been cared for. They were, we'll have our peer support as well as our psychological services branch attending to the officers, making sure that they receive the support they need, and otherwise, but they were uninjured otherwise.
Do you have an estimate of how many officers that were?
At the scene? I don't know for sure. It would have been, it would have been more than a dozen officers at the scene. So.
Just going back to those previous calls to that residence, do you know when the last time you guys were called out to that residence?
I don't have that in front of me, no. So.
Any indication it was some kind of neighbor dispute?
No, there's again the motivation of the shooter and the shooter's state will come through ASERT. So I don't have that before stage, just except to say that the suspect in this case was actively engaging us and the neighborhood with firearms. You consider the bus driver and those passengers, and this is a residential neighborhood, so these are just houses in place. We have people who live in those places who had to take immediate shelter into their basements and try to get out of the harm's way. And a very stressful time for them as well. And I think the motivation will come out of the investigation. But at this stage, we were very concerned about the well-being of our officers and the public in this case.
And just to clarify, so that transit bus would have been driving in front of the house?
I believe it was actually stopped at a bus stop in the area of the house where they experienced that first round.
And it was the bus driver who called 911?
Yes.
Was the suspect speaking at all to police, yelling threats or anything like that?
We had made attempts to engage the person inside, but were unable to really make contact with him. So.
And when the situation escalated, when he exited, he was armed, there was a weapon visible, or?
Again, those will come out of the ACERT investigation, but as the sort of the continuous amount of engagement that we were experiencing led to the ultimate confrontation with the police.